Okay, as this Zero Hedge article says, Trump admits it's the Fed's job to push stocks higher. Yeah, we'll get into this in a moment, but let's look at the article itself. It says, when President Trump demanded earlier this month that the Fed should cut interest rates to undo some of the damage it has done to the economy with its pernicious rate hikes, we pointed out the obvious dissonance between advocating for rate cuts while insisting that the economy is the strongest it has ever been. And it shows a Zero Hedge tweet here. Trump says Fed should drop rates, stop quantitative tightening because economy is so strong. But the incongruity it disappears when one considers that the central bank's dual mandate simply masks its true purpose: to levitate asset prices and ensure that wealthy Americans get richer, while at least for now averting an all-out pension fund crisis. Which, by the way, pensions are in a massive shortfall. I'm looking at, I think it was a $400 trillion shortfall worldwide by the year 2050, which is basically more than 4 times the world's GDP. It's absolutely unsustainable. Anyway, though the central bank's third mandate is rarely, if ever, directly acknowledged, President Trump violated this convention in a tweet on Sunday when he declared that the central bank, had it done its job properly, would have sent the Dow another 5,000 to 10,000 points higher, and that GDP growth would have been well over 4%. And it shows his tweet here. If the Fed had done its job properly, which it has not, the stock market would have been up 5,000 to 10,000 additional points, and GDP would have been well over 4% instead of 3% with almost no inflation. Quantitative tightening was a killer, should have done the exact opposite. In essence, this is the president admitting that the Fed's only job is to push stocks higher. Damn the deteriorating fundamentals that leave valuations increasingly divorced from reality. And it shows this Mark B. Spiegel post. According to Donald Trump, the Fed's job is now officially blowing even bigger stock market bubbles. Of course, as many have pointed out, Trump's conversion to Fed interventionism is relatively recent development, and it shows from 2012 this tweet: the Fed should not do QE3. Neither the economy nor the dollar can withstand another round of artificial liquidity. While this tweet will almost certainly elicit howls from economists warning about the damage Trump is doing to the Fed precious credibility, or whatever is left of it, we think it's refreshing to finally hear the most powerful man in the free world speak openly about its most powerful central bank. Yeah, okay, a little bit of op-ed in there. But isn't this interesting, though? Because, of course, people, we've talked about this before, people talking about how Donald Trump is attacking the Fed, wants to bring in Stephen Moore. Kudlow is talking about Herman Cain. I don't think Herman Cain is going to end up actually in the Fed, but nonetheless, this idea that it's criticizing the Fed by telling them to drop interest rates 0.5% and push for more quantitative easing. Guys, this isn't attacking the Fed. This is a different kind of centralization, but it's still the same cancer. It's pouring kerosene on fire. It's killing cancer with cancer. It's so ridiculous, guys. We can't stop sitting idly by thinking that Trump is attacking the Fed and trust the plan, sit back, relax, be apathetic when this is happening. Of course, he's a president. Presidents don't really have say over the economy, but to talk about we need to have the Fed pumping up, the economy, we need the Fed pumping up the stock market, like the $0 trading desk on Wall Street where the Fed is pumping the stock market artificially, and of course, there's so little liquidity. And at the same time, we look at the plunge protection team, which has been propping up a crazy bubble, and the more it puts it off, the worse it's going to be, and it's going to hurt all of us very, very dramatically, more than we've ever seen anything like it in the history of the world. It has to happen eventually, inevitably. All fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero, always have, always will, going back to 1024 AD in China, and the stock market is like 95% terrible, 5% good. The fundamentals are not there. I look at FANG stocks, for example. It's ridiculous. So this is just another example of more centralization propping up a system that's doomed to fail. And when you see this kind of stuff and people say Trump is attacking the Fed, no. If he really came out and said, we need to end the Fed, which is the only option here, he'd have a bullet in his head from the establishment. This is nonsense. Stop falling for it. This is all just distraction. And people are being led into this. People who are Ron Paul supporters are suddenly like, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Trump is doing what he can. And what are you guys doing? Like, we are losing precious time. One thing we need to do, because there are more solutions than problems, is protect ourselves and protect our purchasing power and stop being slaves to this system. We need to have wealth insurance. We need to look at gold and silver. We need to look at free, decentralized, properly, fundamentally useful cryptocurrency technologies and blockchain infrastructure technology as well. We need to look at multiple issues here that can help save us. But sure, you can make money on the stock market. There's still lots of stuff you could do on the stock market. But with that said, the risk is getting higher and higher. You have the yield curve data, which says a lot about the bond market, for example, on the 10-year Treasury bond. Look at it. The 10-year is inverting with the 3-month. When there's more risk, I mean, look at, I don't know. I know I've been going over this over and over again. I'm having a hard time just putting it into concise points here, because it's just, we've gone over it so many times. It's amazing that we just keep seeing this pile up and people sit back idly by, and it's an incremental frog boil to normalize this massive centralization, to normalize this complete control of us, and these legal tender laws, these fiat legal tender laws, which extort us, which push us into servitude to the banking system, debt servitude, right where they want us. If they shove us down a bottomless pit of debt, we are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, pushing us into perfect servitude right where they want us. So as this stuff continues to unfold, we see people continuously bowing down to it. It's so absolutely absurd. And then at the same time, you have this usury that's enforced under you haven't signed the contract. It's a social contract, that the collectivist paradigm enforces on you at birth. And then you're paying off the interest on the debt, which, by the way, is an example of someone who wants to pay off the debt when you're only paying off the interest on the debt. A credit card company would look at that very suspiciously. Of course, if you were to do that, just pay off the interest on the debt. Of course, it brings in a lot of debt for the populace to end up having to be extorted for. It's all crazy. And then we talk about wages and all that. Well, wages, the reason why the wages seem low is because inflation is high. If you look at shadow stats, over 11% inflation if you use the 1980s standard. And that means that the price of living is inflating all the time. Everything is getting more expensive, but we're being paid at a lower rate. That doesn't mean government come in and centralize more. It doesn't mean government print more. It doesn't mean government regulate more and destroy small businesses by raising the wage. And we'll get into that more in other reports. It just means that we need to, as individuals, be responsible and stop depending on the same individuals that are creating the problem in the first place, as if they are the solution to the cancer that they are creating. Anyway, I could go on about this all day, but you guys know what to do, right? You guys know what you need to do for the sake of your family. This is going to be an evolution, not a revolution. This is going to be you replacing the state, replacing the banking system by your own means, by your ability to protect your purchasing power. And it can come down to no one else but you. I'm just a person that's out here talking. You guys have to do the work yourselves. And if you don't, the longer you put it off, the worse it's going to be for you, and then you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. We do have a link with Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com in most of our videos in the description as well, which can help you. You can buy gold and silver there, and his books and all that kind of stuff. Great market historian. We do have other options. There's so much you can do to learn about this. I certainly suggest reading Rothbard, Hayek, Mises. There's so much evidence over time, over thousands of years of history, to prove that this type of centralization doesn't work and it only benefits those at the top. And then we have people on the left and the right promoting that same mechanism to solve the problem that it's created in the first place. Banks are doing fractional reserve lending, in some cases zero reserve policies, in places like Canada, for example, and they are extorting you. And they are pushing you into that debt servitude right where they want you, and it makes you a willing slave. They want to sacrifice you as a pawn for the king and the queen. And so many people are just blindly going along with it. And bringing up pensions earlier was a great example, considering the fact that people are dependent on their pensions instead of dependent on or independent in saving for their own futures. They're kind of just extorted and it's taken out of their paycheck, and they're expected to trust the banking system and government, etc., to be able to have money when they retire. So many lives are going to be ruined. There will be torches in the street, and it's so sad to watch as people just don't understand it, because money is considered boring. But it is one of the biggest mechanisms of control. And if you don't understand money, you don't understand those that are controlling you. You must have control over your money so you can have control over yourself. because if you don't have control over your money, the people who have control over the money have control over you, and therefore you are a slave, and you will be led to your inevitable slaughter. The sooner this collapses, the better. We need it to collapse. So in a lot of ways, it's like let it burn down, more quantitative easing and all that. But it hurts to watch this perpetuated so long. So it needs to happen the sooner the better. And we need to learn at a free market, free monetary level and go from there. But anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Like what you see here, WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so heavily demonetized and censored by YouTube, as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. The shadow banning is getting really bad, guys. Also, check our Bitcoin address right here on the screen or in the description below. We really appreciate it. And of course, check us out at the Red Pill Expo 2019. Of course, the great G. Edward Griffin and so many other incredible speakers will be there. Our link for that is below as well. And we cannot forget Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com, which you can also find in the description. One of the greatest market and monetary historians out there. We really encourage everyone to check that out. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.